right, guys, what's up? Welcome to My Ethos Podcast. I'm here today with my buddy Josh, and I'm Vince, and we're rolling right into it today, dude. I'm excited. We've had a crazy week. You have a cold right now?
I do. I have a summer cold. I didn't even know that could happen, but turns out.
Yeah, I think you're not supposed to get summer colds, though, because
it's a drag, you know, when it's really hot outside and you have a sore throat. So I'm going to be sucking on some Ricolas. Hopefully it doesn't bother you guys. But anyway, the show must go on because we're doing this every week, rain or shine, cold or no cold.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah, that's what they say. I don't know, but we're doing this for you, and whatever you guys are doing out there, I hope that you guys are good. Hope everybody's safe. If you're driving, just keep this podcast on. Don't mess with it because you don't want to get in a wreck. And thank you guys again, by the way, for listening and commenting and subscribing. We really do appreciate it. I got some speaking gigs coming up at VBF in Bakersfield next Wednesday, or this Wednesday, actually. I'll be speaking there, so hopefully I can see some of you guys there. I got some other stuff coming up this summer. It's funny because you and I were just talking today about the skill of speaking and putting together a talk. It's like it's almost like a skill that everybody has to have now, right? Like a skill of just communication to the masses or communication to at least your community, right? Like,
I think so. I mean, do you remember your first job interview? Like, seriously? I mean, I just remember being like 16 years old and not really thinking about the speech part or like the public speaking part of actually being in an interview.
Right.
And not knowing what to say or not being lost for words when you're like being grilled for, like answers and you're just like it reminds me of what's his face from Talladega Nights. He's like, what do I do with my hands?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's like a constant just fear. But I hate public speaking, dude. I really do, which is so weird.
It's not fun, and it's definitely not a skill that comes naturally. That's for sure. What's funny is I've been listening to myself speak. I was like watching some stuff.
It's the worst.
Yeah, it is completely the worst. But one good thing that I learned is that I say way too much, like way too much.
Is that
so
true?
I'm gonna replace it with like. No, I'm just gonna I'm gonna stop saying that. So I'm just gonna have to be okay with like dead air. I just said like. So those filler words, those are hard to not say.
Yeah, you know what?
Exactly.
Yeah, honestly though, I just feel like you just got to be who you are, and it's like when people talk to me on a normal basis, like if I'm in a conversation, I am gonna say, you know what? Something I caught on to this week, and I thought was really interesting. It's just funny, and maybe it's just because he was doing a YouTube channel, so he's trying to be, I guess, like appeal to more audiences. But it was a foreign guy. Mm-hmm. He was speaking in a foreign language, but when he would take his pauses, he would also just go, So he'd be like complete, like speaking Chinese.
It's universal.
Yeah, he'd be like speaking Chinese and then he'd be like, and then go back into Chinese. And I just thought it was hilarious.
How do you translate in another language? It's
It's just right.
That's what it is. All right, so this week we're going to be talking to you guys about the importance of challenging yourself. I was thinking about this week, and one of the things that I've noticed is there's a huge difference, and I mean a huge difference between successful people who are constantly challenging themselves versus people that just don't challenge themselves. There's a lot of people that just kind of live life and they don't actively just challenge themselves with real things. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, my throat is like pretty bad right now, but
dude. You're gonna die. Josh is literally choking right now, so hopefully he comes back from that. If you actually subscribe to our YouTube channel, you actually can see Josh choking and then drinking green tea to recover from.
It's yerba mate, and I'm gonna run out of it, but I'll grab some more water if I need to. But there's a huge difference between people that challenge themselves and people that don't. And so I asked Vince to come up with some questions. And I came up with some questions that I think are important questions that we can all ask ourselves on a regular basis to challenge ourselves. So, Vince, I'm going to start with you. What's the first question that you think is important to ask yourself on a regular basis?
So, one of the questions that I had right off the bat was that something so bad. One of the questions I had in the first, when you asked me the other day, like, what are 3 questions that you're constantly thinking about? And the first one is, how do you spend time, or how do you spend your time? Like, how do you spend like your time here on earth? Like, what do you do with your time? Like, how important is your time, et cetera, et cetera?
Right. Well, if you think about that from a practical point of view, most people spend a lot of time at work And then you spend a lot of time sleeping. You spend a lot of time eating. So you have probably a few hours left of so-called free time. And if you're a family person, you have 4 kids. I have a kid. I have a wife. You've got a lot of things to do with your family. So ultimately, the question is, how are you spending your free time? How are you spending the time that you have? But even at work too, right? Like, are you spending it being productive? Because a lot of people, they slack off at work. Let's be honest. A lot of people, they're, on the job, they're doing their 8 hours, but how much work are they actually doing? That's why I'm a proponent too of contract work, of hiring. If you're like a business owner, I'm a huge proponent of hiring out contractors, because you're judging them based on what they get done.
Right.
Not necessarily how many hours they're putting in.
They're working.
Like
correct.
when people are putting in hours, it's great. It's awesome. They're there. You can call them. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But what are they actually getting done?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of employers don't focus on that. You know what I mean?
Well, I think too, like one of the things I'm constantly challenging myself is, and we had this conversation the other day, is like, there's some things that we can do. Like you can spin your wheels on a daily basis, like on the normal 8 to 5, work grind, whatever you want to call it. And sometimes you spin your wheels on things that don't matter that much, or, things that aren't as important or not big picture, not that you don't have to do little things throughout the day to make sure the big picture things get done. But a lot of times what we do is we spend a lot more time worrying about the little things versus cashing in or, per se working on the big things or the things that are going to have a lot of impact later on in our future. So for me, it's not just about like, how do I spend my time? Like, what am I doing? Like, obviously spending time with my family, things like that are important to me. But I guess how efficient, how effectively am I spending my time? And am I spending the time on things that actually matter?
Most people are reactive instead of proactive.
Oh, dude, definitely.
Completely. Like they always worry about what emergency is happening or who's yelling at them the loudest, right? What voice is most prevalent, and they're going to focus on that emergency and fixing it. And I've seen people honestly end up with health issues because they're so stressed out about what people think. Now, granted, I understand if you have a boss, you have to make sure that you get the work done that he or she wants you to get done, right? Totally understandable. But if you wake up in the morning, first thing you do is check your emails and your texts and your messages on Sprout or on social, whatever it is.
Right.
You could just be totally stressed out. You could be just it could consume you. And a lot of experts say, a lot of entrepreneurs and successful people, highly productive people say that you should do the important work first, then focus on the other things. Now, I know that there's some common sense elements in there, and each person needs to create their own system. But just the fact that some people even think about creating a system puts them pretty far ahead. So how are you spending your time? Think about it. Think about it right now, wherever you're at.
Yeah, I think it's a great challenging question. I think like sometimes, especially if you're younger and you're setting yourself up, for what you're going to do in the future, the thing that you're doing now.
Because you have a lot of free time when you're young, and you don't realize it until you're older and you don't have any free time.
I heard something really cool today from, I think we've mentioned Gary Vee. I know Gary Vee's listening to this podcast right now. So, hey, what's up, Gary Vee?
Thanks, Gary.
But he said he was talking to a kid today, and the kid's like, hey, man, like, I want to have nice stuff in life. Like, you always talk about like getting nice stuff. And he's like, I want to own a Porsche. And he's like, that's cool. He said, if you own a Porsche, you'll never own Porsche. And I thought that was interesting because he was talking about just the idea of like not cashing in on that temporary, that temporary feeling of like, I got to have this or I want this or whatever, but actually building yourself a future. And I think a lot of times, as even in our mid 30s or whatever, wherever you're at in life, I think a lot of times we cash in, especially with our time, on things that are temporal. Like we're like, okay, we're just trying to make that quick buck, or if I just do this one thing really, really quick for an hour,
right?
I know it's gonna pay off, a little bit of money instead of working on things that will pay off long term.
Right.
This week we had a conversation. I wanted to do some photography and video classes.
Right.
And it was cool because you kind of brought me down a level. And again, it was challenging my time. You're like, not that we couldn't do photography classes and make a little bit of extra money for the studio, per se. But it's small picture. Like, I'm going to have a couple people in here. And yes, I like making relationships. But at the end of all, those classes, there's not anything. It's not really what I want to do for the future.
Right.
So does it make sense to spend a little bit of time toiling for a little bit of money? And not that money's the only purpose. when there's so much more to be had or
Right.
to be said. So I guess just don't get caught up, especially when you're spending time. Don't get caught up on the little things and spending your time on things that don't have big payoffs. Again, think of time as a return on your investment.
Right.
If you put time into something, what is the return that you're getting on your time? If you're putting it into your family, you're obviously investing into family life, your kids, things like that. But when it comes to your like regular time, your personal time, yes, you need recreation. Yes, you need to go hang out with the guys. But also with your work time, like what is it that you're doing what's the payoff for what you're doing, I guess?
Well, you used to always say, go for the lowest hanging fruit. I think that's true sometimes, but I don't think that's true all the time. I think sometimes a lot of people, they focus on the low hanging fruit, the easiest thing to do at the moment, and they miss, an entirely different fruit tree. And so I think that sometimes, yes, there are moments where you are kind of in a
to go for
desperate
the
situation.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to make a few extra $100 to like survive. I get that, but there are moments too when there's something maybe in the shadow that's much bigger that you're just not seeing because you're so focused on the emergency in front of you. You're so focused on usually it's somebody else's stress. Usually you're working. A lot of times people are working on someone else's stress, and that's that's BS. That sucks, man. It really does. So the first question that I had, which is funny because we almost started to get into it, but is this battle worth fighting?
Okay.
I think that's a question.
That's a good one.
You should constantly be asking
yourself. You should be
constantly,
yeah. All right.
Because there's going to be new battles pretty much every week. There's a new battle every day, right?
Oh, dude, yeah.
Somebody's gonna. We were talking about that earlier. Like people come at us for some weird reason. We don't know why. We're trying to figure that out. But
it's us.
Yeah,
obviously.
My wife is actually asking me. She's like, "How come people always get upset with you guys?" I don't know. We're just doing our thing. People hate it when we just do our thing. But there are battles to be fought every single day and every single month, every single year. And I've seen good men and good women focus so much on fighting those battles, then it just leads them down a path. And that battle ends, and they're nowhere closer to the goal that they've set for themselves. And they're nowhere closer to where they feel they should be in their lives. And that's sad. It really is. And so I think you need to constantly ask yourself, is this one worth fighting for? Because yes, it makes you feel good when you fight, right? Like it gives you kind of an adrenaline high. There's like, especially as a guy, like it fires me up and I want to like, if somebody punches me, I want to punch them back.
Right.
That's what I want to do. I want to put them in their place. You know what I mean? But that takes energy. That takes time. And ultimately it takes you away from what's important. It just does.
Right. I think there's a difference between fighting a battle and searching for a battle. Does that make sense? Because I think
some people just do that. Yeah.
I think a lot of people are constantly looking for something to fight or something to battle. And I think if we talked about this earlier in the car, and it wasn't about battles, it was just about being a disruptor. Like if you're I think a lot of people get upset with guys like us or with anybody like entrepreneurs per se, anybody that's out putting themselves out there,
right?
Because they're constantly challenging the status quo, and people don't like when you challenge their way of life. Like when you say, hey, like there might be a better way, they're like, nah, this is what works for me. Like just stay out of my way. It's my personal life. Or people they have their way, and that's cool. Like I'm not trying to infringe my way of life on anyone. I'm just challenging the whole thing. And
why is that though? Why do people feel challenged when you think of a different way to do something? Like they have to do something. Like if what they are doing works for them, why can't they just not worry about what someone else is doing and just do it the way that's fine. It's funny how innovation always seems to be met with a ton of backlash. Like it just does. Like even if it's just an idea in the idea stage, it's like if you're somebody that's like, hey, I'm gonna do something different, because this way isn't working for me, other people like just start hating on you. I don't know why.
Well, I think it goes back to what you said. I think it's the battle thing. I think people fought really hard to get where they've gotten, and so when you challenge what they have, they're gonna fight it. And I think those are the battles like where you can't.
Is it a competitive thing?
I think it's competitive, but I think it's fighting for territory. Like it's like, hey, I've done this, I've established here. Don't tell me that there's another way to do it. So if you're a business owner, right? And I come to you and say, hey, you need to get on Instagram TV, which just came out yesterday. Mm-hmm. You're gonna look at me and go like, that's dumb. But I promise you in 3 months, you're going to be like, how do I get on Instagram TV? Especially if you're in the service business.
And a lot of people haven't heard of this.
Okay, but I'm just saying, that's my point, right? Because I'm going to say, today I'm going to say Instagram TV is important, but tomorrow, if I go try to sell somebody, they're going to be threatened, like, I don't need to pay for that. But then, everyone's always working behind the thing, but they're going to be challenged in the sense of like, does that make sense? They're going to be challenged by like, I don't need that. It's going to be threatening to them. I don't need one more thing on my plate. per se. Maybe they don't. I don't know what the industry is. But what I'm saying is like, those are the things like battling, working for Instagram TV and doing that battle and working at that might be worth fighting for.
Right.
Whereas spending your energy figuring out why you have to hate it might not be worth, you know, like there's going to be two camps where people embrace technology and innovation and things. And they're going to figure out the battle is going to be, how do I get onto that platform and embrace it? And then there's going to be those that just fight it and say, it's not worth it. We're not doing it right, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And so that's, I think, picking and choosing your battles and how you fight your battles. And again, not so much looking for a fight. And if you are fighting, I think it's fighting for the right thing, you know?
And some people, they miss opportunities because they have told themselves that there are no opportunities. You know what I mean? Like we believe the lies we tell ourselves. We just do. And I think some people wake up and they just start thinking negatively because that's how they, you know, have trained their mind to think. And I've talked about it before. There is a positive side to thinking negatively, like with problem solving. You need to think about problems so you can learn how to solve them. But if you're stuck in a place where you're just constantly thinking about the problems and complaining about it, like that's a sad place to be. And you're never going to see opportunities when they do come. Like,
it's internal conflict, right?
Internal conflict. It's a constant thing. My next question, we'll go to yours after this. My next question is, are you as free as you can be? Are you as free as you can be? Because there's a level of servitude that we're all going to have in life. Okay.
Right.
You're not fully free all the time. I can't just, in the middle of the day when I'm supposed to be working on a project that somebody's expecting me to get done, I can't just get up and go to Disneyland. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not free to do that. But the question I'm constantly asking myself is, have I left in my life enough of a boundary to be able to try something new, or to try something that that might challenge me, that maybe I've done before, it failed at, or whatever. Like, I'm constantly wondering in my life, do I have those boundaries? And if I don't have those boundaries, I start feeling like a caged bird. Like I do. And when you first put a bird in a cage, it's going to flap around and get really upset, but ultimately it's just going to become paralyzed and just sad. You know what I mean? And I'm always fighting that. I don't want to be that. I want to be somebody who has enough boundaries. And I think that can only come with the skill of nicely, politely saying no, learning how to just say no. I've read some books recently that say you should say no to most things, you know?
Oh man, that's awesome.
Which is interesting. Okay. And I've become kind of like a joke in my family, but I've become the person that ends up saying no first before I even think something through. And I don't want to be a jerk. I don't want to have zero friends in my life, but ultimately, people, you know, are gonna come after your time. They're gonna come after, I'm trying to say this in a sensitive way, because a lot of times I'm talking about like friends wanting to hang out on a Friday night. Of course, you want friends to want to hang out with you on a Friday night.
Did you try to ditch me last week? I got your wife though. I knew how to get to you because we were gonna go out for a family dinner.
But you know why though?
No, I know why, because I would have done the same thing to you.
You would have, yeah.
100%. Like, nah, dude, just come over.
It's because I've trained myself to say no first. Like, and I'm glad we ended up getting together and having dinner with the families. It was really nice. It was good. We needed that. But it was like I was in my own place. I had a moment to like relax and chill and like swim with my kid. I've been wanting to do that for a while.
Right.
And I just was trying to protect that time. But aside from that type of stuff, like, you know, there's a difference between hanging out with friends and family, like you need to do, versus constantly, you know, and there's nothing wrong with this. Okay. But let's say that you're a person who wants to build a business, a side business, but you're in a softball league, okay? Softball leagues are great, awesome. Yeah. I have nothing against the softball league, but don't complain about not being able to start your side business if you're also doing a softball league. Like, I would love to do a softball league, but I don't have time. You know, and when it comes down to it, it's how you spend that extra time that really matters. And so when I say, are you free, how that kind of comes back together is, are you free to choose the hard things versus the easy things?
And I would tag too onto
that. And also it's a commitment thing too, right? Like with a softball, like if you're in a softball league, that's a commitment, dude. You just committed 3 or 4 months of your life to playing softball, which again, if you do that or if you commit to like I don't know, whatever it is that people do these days. I don't know what's that fantasy football thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Like nothing's wrong with any of that stuff. If you want to do that, do that. That's perfectly fine. Like if that makes you happy, I want you to do that, honestly.
Right. No, I think you do need an outlet.
But if you're somebody who's needs to make an extra $500 a month, or you need to have a creative outlet, or you need to have some sort of growth, like you're gonna have to give something up. And so, like working hard now creates a future freedom, I think too.
I'd say just tagging on to yours, 'cause I really like that point, like the freedom thing. But I think constantly learning also has to do with that, where you don't get stuck. Because I think a lot of times we get pigeonholed into whatever that we're doing, and we stop learning, we stop innovating, we stop coming up with ideas, we stop freely thinking.
Right.
And no matter what you're doing, even if you're flipping burgers, like just don't get stuck doing the thing, like constantly be learning and pursuing something different. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No.
And so I think that's a great way to kind of buy freedom, is constantly learning new skills and new skill sets. And
I think the main point of what we're both saying here is everyone is different, but everyone like there's no excuse not to have your own system, to think about what works for you and your family and the people. Because I see life or the life we've been given, like we are a tool. Like we are not like a tool, like a not cool guy, but like a tool. Like
some of you guys are though, and you need to fix that.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
But and
Jeremy's shaking his head.
We might be accused of that sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
But what I'm talking about is like you are a vessel that can really help people. You can really do something good in this world with your life work, right? Like you can leave a legacy in this world. You ever go to a funeral? This is horrible to think about, but have you ever gone to a funeral where people are like struggling to figure out what to say about the person? Like, I don't know if you ever have or not.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, totally.
But that's like sad. But then you go to a funeral where like they're like, this is what this person was about. And you have like teary eyes and you have all stuff. Like there's an intention there with people who have lived their life in a way to where people know what their life is about. There's an intention.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Well, I'll skip to my third question because I think that's not my middle question. That's my third question. I got my questions jumbled up in the beginning. Right. I apologize. But I said, do people know what you stand for and what you live for? And I think that's important. I think that's a question that should be constantly asking yourself, even if that's moving and you're constantly transitioning from thing to thing. I think people should know what's your overarching,
like what you're about.
Mm-hmm. Whether if that means that they need to know that you believe in God, or that you have this relationship with God, or that most
people probably don't even know what they're about themselves. Like they don't even know.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, I think people should know that, are you somebody that genuinely cares for others? Or, what's your ethos? What's your ethos? Exactly.
Right?
I think you should be constantly asking yourself because I think a lot of times we take a job, or we take side business, or we're doing this sports thing with friends, or we're joining a club, or whatever the case may be. And we're not necessarily doing it because it lines up with who we are or who we want to become as people, but we're just doing it for filler or whatever. Which goes back to how we spend our time. But I think if you constantly are asking yourself, like, who am I wanting to become, like you said, or what's the legacy I want to leave, I think that plays in to your overall, like, how you're going to spend a lot of your time, and how you're going to treat people, and how like how you're going to be seen in the world.
Look, this isn't easy stuff that we're talking about, and you will have resistance, internal and external, like a ton of resistance, but your life is your life, and you have an opportunity to do something with it. And if you start thinking long-term, right? Like long-term, like I've come to a place now in my life, it's taken me a while, but I've come to a place where I know what I want to do the rest of my life, and I know what I want to leave. And getting to that place takes work, but it also takes, it's like you've taught me this. It's a grind. Like you just have to do it week after week, day after day.
Right.
And that's what life's about. If somebody can do that, then it's just awesome. And let me go back to the softball league thing. If that's part of your spiel, if that's part of who you are, and that's what you want to do that. I'm not crapping on like hobbies or other things. I have hobbies. I think they're important. I really do. I think it rounds us out. But my point is use your time wisely.
Well, you're just saying if you're trying to do something else and you're complaining that you can't, if you're trying to start a business and you're complaining,
something's got to give.
Something has to give, and you have to figure out what's the most important thing. And maybe the softball league is the most important because you need the support group of friends and things like that.
It might be, yeah.
I totally get what you're saying. Yeah. I've been there. I think sometimes being involved in those extra, recreational activities is more important than trying to hustle because you need that support, whether you're going through something personal or whatever. So I totally get the need.
We're not like softball sucks.
Yeah. Well, I'm horrible at it, so I struck out. I'll just keep going back. You'll hear in every podcast. I'm just going to talk about how I struck out softball.
How bad you are at softball.
Yeah. The other thing was, and I think it goes along with this. My last question was, how does the thing that we do impact others around us? And I talked about this kind of last episode, but I'm really getting to a place in life where the impact that I have on others around me, I want it to be significant enough where it doesn't have to be memorable and the most thing, but I want people, again, to know what I'm about and know that at the end of the day, I know it sounds weird, but that I'm a good person, I guess. I don't know how to say that better. Maybe you have a better translation of that, but I don't want, if I have conflict with somebody or battle with somebody, I don't want to be known as the tool, like you said, or whatever the case may be. I want to be able to work through problems and with solutions and be able to work with people. I think working with people and having community and being able to, even if you don't agree, is a really important skill set I think that we've lost. And I think and I'm coming back to it, like where I'm having to work with people that I'm necessarily don't want to work with or I'm not excited about working with. But at the end of the day, like if it can accomplish something good or if it can even accomplish peace per se in my micro environment or my micro community, I'm not talking about world peace here. It's worth it to me, and that's a battle that it's worth.
Well, you're not talking about world peace, but if everyone decided to be like that, there would be more world peace. It would actually affect the whole world. Nothing wrong with being an idealist there at all.
Right.
But I think that the thing you're talking about is character.
Yeah,
you want your character to grow.
Yeah,
and you want to be, tougher mentally. Like as men, like I know we want to be tougher mentally, physically, and spiritually. Like tough. We want to be strong, and we want to be able to help people that are in need, or we want the people in our families, the people that are closest to us, to know they can rely on us, to know there's a strength there. And I think that's a godly characteristic. Mm-hmm. I think that's like a respectable characteristic. You want to be somebody that other people can come to. That's what I want to be.
Right. Emotionally stable, too, is a huge part of that.
Huge,
right,
dude.
Because I think that's one of the things where in my past, I think all guys deal with it. You wouldn't say emotional, they would just have a temper, but I think it's easy to fly off the handle and get really worked up about something that doesn't have to be that big of a deal and you can just roll with. And I think being able, again, we talked about this last episode, talking about meditation and prayer and being able to come to a place where the big things aren't really that big of a deal.
It's funny with guys because guys are like, they'll never admit, I cry all the time, but they will say, I have an anger problem. It's the same thing, dude. Like you just let's just be honest. Like if you cry all the time or whether you yell at people all the time, you have a problem controlling your emotions.
Your emotions, true.
You just do.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the ways we've talked about this before, one of the ways to control your emotions is to just meditate, think, breathe. Not talking about weird stuff. Just go over things in your mind and realize that whatever's coming your way or coming at you in the moment, you can handle it. It's going to pass. This too shall pass is the old proverb. Like it will. And that's what we talk about with the whole suicide thing. Like that's what happens is people, I think they tell themselves that it's okay to do that to themselves. And then something happens in their life and they can't control their emotions and they choose to do it. Of course, there's also the mental issues and instabilities and disease. And I understand that that's a little different, but, it's just sad when we have the tools to be able to control and to do better. And so maybe one of these days we'll get somebody that's more of an expert in this area. They can talk about emotions. I got some psychologist friends, and we got Nick. We got our school psychologist.
We got
a
school psychologist. He's our go-to.
Yeah. So we just mumble the school and just say he's a psychologist. It works pretty well. But my last two questions are kind of one and the same too. But the first one is, originally when I wrote it out, I wrote, am I better today than I was yesterday? But I think it needs to be more specific because that's kind of like, am I better today, than I was? What's yesterday?
I think that's good because I think there's moments in my life where I do wake up in the morning and something happened the day before. And I think now in this part of my life, I guess I would say in this stretch of my life, which is weird because I'm not that old, but I feel like I'm getting older. in this stretch of my life is I do wake up and say, how can I rectify or make this better today?
Right.
Not without spending a ton of energy and spending a lot of time in the past and, like, and like, I guess just being caught there, but just saying, how can I be better today? If I made a mistake in the past, I think learning from your mistakes, waking up the next day and going, I can make this better. And I think being able to process those things in a very quickly manner. And again, that comes with being emotionally stable, being mature. If you can process those things quickly, you're going to grow and bounce back quickly. I think the problem is that when we do think about correcting mistakes,
right,
as we get really caught up and we can black hole those mistakes. You know what I'm talking about? It's like, and then we wallow in it and it's all this stuff happens and we just can't get past it. And I think, again, I think I used to be that person that something would happen and it would take a whole week to be like, to figure it out. But now I'm able to process it. I talk it out. Having a friend is obviously important to be able to, I think being able to just audibly speak out your problems talk them through with somebody is just a great way to find solutions for them.
Yeah, and it's not a wussy thing to do either. It's not like we were taught when we were young, and especially our parents were taught when they were young, you don't talk about your feelings, you don't talk about your personal life with your friends. But dude, how much healing is there in doing that? There really is. It's really important to do.
Process for solution, because a lot of times I'll say stuff to you, and I'm like, hey, this thing, and I'm telling you about what's happening. But it's not so much I'm coming to you like, hey, it's more like questioning, like, this is happening. I don't know why. But it's enabling me to just get off what's off my chest, process it, and move on and figure out how. And again, you can't control what other people are going to do. So I'm not saying you're not going to be able to dictate how.
And we've been friends since high school. We work together. We are friends aside from work, but we're pretty honest. We're kind of brutally gut level.
We're brutally honest.
People that hang out with Vince and I, it's funny because they'll hang out with us and we'll just be gut level brutal honest. And they're like, dude, you guys are mean to each other. But no, it's just how we've learned to get better, honestly. I love it, dude.
Sometimes we're just mean to be mean too.
Sometimes, okay. Sometimes we get mad at each other. But so the original question was, am I better today than I am yesterday? So it is a daily practice thing, but I think it's also a yearly thing. So I rewrote it as, am I better than I was a year ago?
Oh, New Year's resolutions here.
Yeah, I mean, really, dude, I really believe in that stuff. Not resolutions necessarily, but every December or even my birthday, I think that's probably the bigger. It's my own personal New Year. I always look back and I think, what did I accomplish this year? What did I do this year that it means something? What did I do this year that really matters and is going to last and my daughter's going to remember? What did I do this year?
Yeah.
And you can get a lot done in a year if you focus.
Right.
You really can. And so I would encourage you guys out there to think about your life in terms of daily, yes, but also in yearly and even a decade. I think Tony Robbins or somebody was talking about he said that we underestimate or we overestimate what we can do in months, right? We overestimate, we think we can just turn everything around in a matter of months. He said, but we highly underestimate what we can do in a decade. And I think that's 100% true. If you spend a decade, if you're in your 20s or your 30s or even your 40s or even your 50s, and you say this next 10 years, I'm going to be focused, I'm going to do these things, I'm going to make an impact in this area, and you stick with it for 10 years, there's no way you're not going to be successful, because that's a rarity in itself.
Well, you can get a doctorate in
you can become a full expert in something,
anything. So
you just can. Yeah,
I think the problem is, and I don't know where we sell ourselves short when we think about time and we think about years. If somebody said, hey, you can go to college and get your degree in a year, everyone would have a degree, right? But when you have to think about it in these 4-year terms, that's why these colleges that pop up and say, get your degree done in 2 years, everyone's like, yes, I can know for sure commit to 2 years. But when we think of this time and committing, we have this idea that the stretch is just vast, and it's really not. 4 years comes and goes. My kid, dude.
The truth is, it's gonna come and go no matter what. It's coming.
No matter what.
That 5 years is gonna pass no matter what. That 10 years is gonna pass no matter what. The question is, what are you gonna do during that time to get to where you need to be?
Well, my oldest son, Huntington, which is crazy to think. You remember when Huntington was born? You watched him as an infant.
I did.
And he's going into junior high this year.
Being a babysitter back then.
I was at a conference and you called me and you're like, dude, I just can't get him to stop crying. I'm like, oh, now you have your own kid.
Well, he was asleep when I came over to watch the guy, and then he wakes up and I'm there, and he's like, "What the
poor Huntington?
What the heck is going on?" It is really.
But funny. now that you have a baby and you figure out they just cry and cry, you're just like, well, totally what it is. Yeah. He just won't stop. That's awesome. But he's going into junior high this year. Dude, 12-year-old going to junior high camp for the first time, and I just think,
The time flew.
Yeah. Like, where did that time, like, it's not. So like you said, the time isn't like, it's not going to pause for you.
Right.
So what you do now is going to have impact. But again, I think for a lot of people, when you say, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, I think you're 100% right. Looking into the next 10 years is probably better than looking at tomorrow, you know, and then there's people that would say, don't worry about tomorrow, you know, whatever. But I do think it's smart to, on a daily level, to be able to check. Like, I like what you said. This podcast should be said, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Because if you can look at yourself on a daily level and check yourself, it's going to cause you to, you know, you're going to be able to get rid of a lot of things that would have caused you to wreck, you know, yourself into the future.
Right.
And I think
it happens unintentionally, you know.
It does.
People,
it builds up.
You wonder what happens to people. You know, they make a big mistake or they do something really crazy, or to, like, some people, like marriages, they break up or somebody loses their job and you wonder what happened there. But it was a gradual thing. I guarantee it. Usually it is. I mean, it's normally like it's just the fact that if you're unintentional, then things are just, they're not going to go well. Right. My pops always says, you're either in, what does he say?
Incline,
recline, or decline. Yeah. Right. And it's true. It is true. When you're in incline, what are you doing? You're trudging uphill. You're working is what you're doing. You're being intentional. You're taking the bull by the horns. When you're in recline, you're just kicking back, relaxing, and that eventually leads to decline. It really does. And that's how it is with everything. My ethos is all about health. It's all about spiritual, mental, and physical health. All three of those areas need to be worked on.
We're two guys that share studio space, and we're probably two guys that really, we have amazing wives, and our wives are really good at taking care of us. And so we do have a trash can in the studio. And sometimes that trash can gets a little bit fuller than it should. Neither of us are probably experts. I have I have a junior high son now, thank God, and he can do some chores around the house and take that trash out. But sometimes that trash won't be taken out. And if the trash doesn't get taken out on a daily level, it'll start to stench. But I think what happens is people you let the trash build up, something gets in there, and you just kind of get used to the smell. You're like, I can deal with that one more day. And you keep piling stuff in, and you're like, the bag won't rip. I can still take it out. And, hoarders, they call them hoarders, right? But I think the idea applies in life where we let that bag and that trash keep getting full and full, and we get used to the smell and the stench, and we're like, it's fine. I'll take it out tomorrow. I'll take it out tomorrow. I'll take it out tomorrow. And eventually it just becomes this way bigger issue than it should have. And I think a lot of times that's where, again, what we're talking about today is we're taking out that trash daily, figuring out like that's just something that you should do, like it's something that makes sense. And I think a lot of times if we just do the thing that makes sense, or if we do the thing that's right in front of us, it's going to cause us to go a lot further than we would have if we would not have taken care of the things in front of us.
I see where you're going with this. I'll take the trash out, dude. Sorry.
Hey, it's not just the trash, bro. It's the toilet.
It's everything, right?
Listen, you got to sweep this floor. What's going on? No.
The last thing I want to leave you guys with is, what are you actively doing to improve it? What are you actively doing to make yourself a better version of yourself so that you can give back to your family, so that you can give back to your community, so that you can give back to the world that you live in? Like, what are you doing? And if you don't know the answer to that, go home tonight and open up like your notebook, or like if it's your phone, write it in your phone, write it down. Say, this is what I'm going to do this month to improve either my spiritual life, my physical life, or my mental life. I'm going to do one of these three things, and just start there. And maybe, like us, you'll become more addicted to just improving. I hate working out, I really do, but I started doing it again because I know I have to. I watched a video last year of me speaking, and it was right after we did that Spartan race. It was like the day after we did the Spartan race, and I was just in better shape, and I looked better, and I know that I felt better even though I was sore. And it just makes me want to get back to that place, and mentally and spirit. I think if you can be healthy in all three of those areas, then you're just going to be rocking. You're going to be doing good things, and people are going to be wondering what's going on. And so that's that. And we love you guys, and we'll talk to you guys soon. All right. Thank you again for checking in and for watching and listening. And we will see you when we see you.